Entitlements is a new entity introduced with this release. An entitlement allows you to specify and control the amount and type of support a customer is entitled to receive. You can specify the amount of support in terms of support hours or the number of cases that a customer is entitled to open. There are some additional options you can use to restrict the use of entitlements based on certain conditions, such as limiting the support to a specific product or limiting which contacts from a company are authorized to open a case. We will discuss each of those options when we demonstrate how to create an entitlement. Another feature to help quickly create new entitlements is the ability to create entitlements based on an entitlement template. In the section on service level agreements, you'll see how an SLA can be associated with an entitlement to provide different service levels based on different entitlements. Let's take a quick look at how you can create a new entitlement. First, I'll navigate to the settings area, which I'm already in, and then within settings, I'll go to service management. And within the service management area, I'll see that there's a location where I can create entitlements, or I can create entitlement templates. You'll also see that you can create entitlements from within an account or contact record. So one of the things I'll show you is I do already have two pre-created entitlement templates. I'll just open up one of those so you can kind of see what one looks like. The creation of an entitlement template is really pretty much almost the same thing as creating a new entitlement, so we won't show the same thing twice. We'll focus on creating a new entitlement from scratch. But we will see that when I am creating a new entitlement, I do have the ability to create that new entitlement based off of one of those templates. So if I choose the option here, I can choose either from a blank entitlement to create from scratch, or I can choose from template, and I can choose one of those templates to have it automatically populate those values from the template as the default values. So you can see there's only a few different things I would have to fill in then because it's able to use the information from that template. Instead of showing the template scenario, let's look at how you can create an entitlement from scratch, and that'll help you understand each of the different options that are available. So here you'll see that not all the different values are pre-populated like they were with the template. First I need to provide a name. Then I need to choose what is the primary customer for this entitlement. Each entitlement needs to be associated to either an account or contact. One thing to be aware of is I did mention that you can create entitlements from within an account or contact record. If I happen to have been within this Adventure Works account record and I chose to create the entitlement from there, it would have automatically populated that value. The next thing I need to do is define a valid date range for this entitlement. So these are required fields. I need to choose that this started maybe yesterday and that this entitlement is valid for a year. You might have some sort of scenario where this entitlement needs to last maybe for a lifetime or forever. In that case, you could bump up the end date to a really large value such as the year 3000 or whatever you need to meet your business requirements. The next option is to restrict based on entitlement terms. Entitlement terms is something we'll get to in a little bit here, but that's kind of related to where you can define the number of cases that they're able to open. So if I have this set to yes and they only have 10 cases available and they've already used those, that would prevent that case from being opened. So we'll get into that in more detail in a moment. The next option that's available is whether or not you want to associate this entitlement with an SLA. SLA stands for Service Level Agreement, and that's a topic we'll be covering in a later section. One of the things you'll learn is that by choosing to associate an SLA with an entitlement, you might have different SLAs, such as an SLA that's for Premier customers or one for standard customers, and by associating them to different entitlements, that allows you to differentiate the different service level agreements you have for your different customers. So for example, if I had a Premier SLA associated with this entitlement, that might give this type of customer a 1-hour response time, and maybe their case needs to be resolved in 1 business day. But I could maybe choose, if this was a standard entitlement, that might be associated to my SLA for standard support, which might have a longer initial response time, and the case resolution time might be a little bit longer. The next section we'll look at is entitlement terms. The first option is allocation type, and this is where you can choose either number of cases or number of hours. Second option is decrease remaining on, where you can choose either case resolution or case creation. Each of those two options goes along with this total terms number, and this is where you're able to specify a number such as 10 here that would go along with both of these, so that this means 10 cases is the number of support cases that this customer is able to open, and it's going to decrement from that number when the case is resolved. So if a case gets open, it doesn't decrease this number until that case gets closed as resolved. If that case gets closed as canceled, it would not decrement this number. If I choose case creation, it'll decrement this immediately when that case is created. If you later close that case as canceled, it would bring back that number that was decremented previously, so it would bring it back to whatever it was before that case was created. So as mentioned earlier, this entitlement terms section is also related to this field over here of restrict based on entitlement terms. So that means if this is set to yes, and the customer is entitled to 10 cases and they've already used up all 10 cases, it would prevent you from creating a new case based off of this entitlement. If this is set to no, then you are not restricted based off the entitlement terms over here. You'll see the next sections are 3 different subgrids, one for entitlement channel, one for products, and one for contacts. You'll notice that it says to enable this content, create the record, so I first need to save this entitlement. So I could activate this entitlement the way it is right now and begin associating support cases against this entitlement. But there are these 3 additional options that you can use. One is for entitlement channel, and what this allows you to do is define the different channels a customer is allowed to use and how many of the different terms they can use for each of those channels. So for example, I could choose that for web, they can use all 10 of those cases through web. Also for email, they can use all of them. If I wanted to restrict them from maybe using phone support, I could choose phone and set the number to 0. So if a case tries to get opened with the channel being phone, it would prevent you from opening that if this is set to restrict based off of terms and they don't have any terms to use for phone. If you don't have anything associated here for entitlement channel, it would let any of the cases be opened regardless of what channel is used. Similar to this, you can choose to associate an entitlement to a product. So for example, if this product was for the widget product, that would mean that this entitlement would only show up as an option if the case was related to the widget product. So that's one of the other options. Finally, there's the ability to associate which different contacts can be authorized to open up a case based off of this entitlement. So without having anything populated, any of the contacts for that account could choose to open up a case for that entitlement. But if I choose to select maybe only some individual contacts, then only Nancy here would be able to open up a case against this entitlement. So again, if there's nothing selected, anyone can do it, but if you choose specific people or specific products, then it will restrict based off of those requirements. Next thing we'll do here is activate this entitlement. So that's very important, is that even though this is currently in the valid date range here, until you activate it, you cannot use it. So I'm going to choose activate, and then I'm going to navigate to the service area. I'm going to locate that account. So I'm going to open up AdventureWorks, which is the account that was associated with that entitlement that we created. So within this account form, you can see that there is a subgrid for active entitlements. And you can see just by looking at this without opening it that this is the premier entitlement, it has 10 remaining terms, and it's currently active. One thing to be aware of is that this subgrid is only showing active entitlements. So if you happen to have forgotten to activate that entitlement, one thing you could do is click this button here to see all the different entitlements that are related to this account. So if there was one that was inactive, I could choose to select it and activate it here, and then go back to that account record. The other thing that we mentioned before is that you do have the ability to create an entitlement from within an account or contact record. So if I click plus here, that would automatically create a new entitlement, and it would pre-populate the value for the customer with this current customer that I'm within here. So let's go ahead and scroll down, and we'll look at the recent cases section. And this is showing me all the recent cases that have been opened. I'm going to choose to create a new case. And now for entitlement, I can choose that entitlement that's active, that's available for this customer. If I had chose that maybe to restrict this based off of the contacts, and I chose Nancy Anderson here, and maybe Nancy Anderson wasn't one of the contacts I affiliated with this entitlement, then when I chose entitlement, it would not show up. So I would only see that entitlement for valid contacts that were authorized to use that entitlement. So same thing for product. If this was related to a certain product and I restricted my entitlement based off of product, it would not let me choose that entitlement unless that was the correct entitlement for that product. So if you don't choose those options, you're not prevented from choosing any of the different options here. So it's only if you choose to use those that it'll enforce those. Here I'll provide a title. Also origin, this is where I can choose if the customer is calling in or if this was email or web. Remember, I did have that option to restrict based off of the entitlement channel. So if I did restrict customers from opening up phone support cases, this is where, based off of this origin, it could prevent me from opening up this support case. So in this case, we didn't do that. Also, be aware that when we created that entitlement, we set it to decrement based off of case creation. So when I save this, we should see that that case was created. If I scroll up, I should see that the remaining terms will get decremented. I'll refresh the form here. And you can see now the remaining terms is 9. The last thing I want to demonstrate in relation to entitlements is the ability to renew an entitlement. So here I've modified the start and end date of this entitlement so that it's no longer within the valid date and time. It still is active, but it shows up as expired because it's not within that valid date range anymore. It shows up expired in the status field here as well. And now I have the option to renew. And what that's going to do is it's going to take all the different values such as the name, the customer, all the other field options here, and it's going to use that to create a new entitlement. Also, instead of setting it to the exact same start date and end date, it'll take the length that was valid for the previous entitlement and use that to calculate the new end date based off of this being the start date. So you can see that would be another way to easily create a new entitlement without having to create it from scratch. Then again, I would want to activate this to make sure it can be used right away.